for more introductions and to introduce our facilitator today. Colleen?
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm pleased to introduce Jonna Lother. She is always looking for opportunities to join forces with people and projects who believe and work for a greater social purpose. Jonna joined Caregivers Alberta in May of 2019 as their provincial program lead, directing programs and services to the almost 1 million family caregivers across Alberta. Working in the field of human services for over 20 years, she has been a speaker at both national and global trade conferences, such as Missouri Healthcare Association Annual Convention and National Center for Creative Aging Global Leadership Exchange in Washington, D.C. She believes firmly in the power of education to impact community-based services, and her joint efforts in research contributed to a publication to the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease entitled The Impact of Creative Arts in Alzheimer's Disease and Dementia Public Health Education. Her passion for supporting persons living with dementia has her hosting Life with Dementia podcast, and also led her to publish a 2014 book, Through the Eyes of Dementia, a pocket guide to caregiving. With 2 children under the age of 6, she defines herself as a woman of action, unless you put a glass of good wine in hand and the perfect sunset to drink it to, in which case you'll find her soaking up the leisure life for as long as the moment lasts. Welcome, Jonna.
Thank you, Colleen. Can everyone see my screen and still hear me at the same time? Somebody give me a nod. I don't see the faces, so
yes,
somebody give me an audible. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Well, good morning. Thank you for having me this morning. I love working with Caregivers Alberta, organization that's based in Edmonton, but serves the entire province. And I'm going to dig into a little bit about what we do and the staff that we have in different areas of the province, which is super exciting. We're in a growth phase with the organization. But sometimes it is nice for you to know a little bit about the person that's speaking to you. So I hope that the intro that Colleen gave you some context for who I am as a person too. I'm very involved in mission-driven work. And so that is why I love working with Caregivers Alberta. I love supporting families and people, and obviously have a personal passion for supporting families affected by Alzheimer's disease and dementia, because it's affected my life and my family. So anyway, let's dig into caregivers. What does caregiver stress look like? How does it affect the caregiver, the care recipient, the family as a whole, and how knowing about these challenges and implications of caregiver stress can reduce the risk of elder abuse. Any questions before I start? Excellent. Okay. I do have a video that I always like to share in the first presentation. So hopefully you can hear the sound. Somebody pop on and let me know if you cannot, but I believe I've selected the right thing for you to hear the sound appropriately. This is a quick little 30-second video that is meant to help drive awareness around who is a caregiver, because we know in Alberta there are over 1 million family caregivers, but what the people that actually identify as such is far less than that. And so there's a lot of need for awareness for both organizations who are supporting these individuals and helping communities understand who is a caregiver. So this is what this little quick video is about.
Herjot left work to care for his wife. He gets her dressed, assists with meals, and helps her get around safely. Lately, he has felt tired and isolated. Herjot is a caregiver. Are you? Caregivers Alberta believes that caregivers need care too. Contact us at 1-877-453-5088.
So we have a couple of those short little video clips on our YouTube channel, again, just for the purpose of sharing and raising awareness. And they're really good resources and tools that you can access and share via social media platforms because they're quick and easy. So who is a caregiver? We define a caregiver as someone who's assisting a family member or friend with challenges that result from disability, illness, or aging. So that description of a caregiver is quite diverse. And because of that, we serve a very wide variety of clients around the province, including some people who are on this call. And so I would ask yourself, do you support someone with an illness? Do you support someone with a disability? Someone who's experiencing aging-related health challenges or needs? Do you support someone with mental health challenges? Are you driving people to doctor's appointments? Are you bringing them groceries? If you answered yes, or you checked the box to any of those questions, you are a caregiver. And so our question that we always ask is, who's caring for you? And that is the mission of our organization, to help care for the caregiver. Caregivers are parents of children with a disability. Caregivers are adult children of seniors. Caregivers are spouses of someone living with cancer or other health diagnoses. Caregivers are friends, neighbors, and family sometimes. So I always love showing a glimpse and a description of this, because awareness, again, and the self-identity piece, I think, is one of the largest barriers that we're working to overcome here in Alberta, so that people recognize who are caregivers and how can we support them. How does caregiving affect the caregiver? That's what we're going to talk about today. How does that role affect their own health and well-being? But how does that caregiving also affect the care recipient? When a caregiver is hitting a burnout phase and their own health and wellness is tanking, their ability to care for their care recipient diminishes. So then the care being given and the quality of life for both the caregiver and the care receiver is compromised, and it experiences additional challenges. So that is why it's really important that we recognize and know what are the challenges that caregivers face, because that can help us see where are the gaps in services and where can we step in as professional organizations to better support caregivers and their families, because that ultimately ends up providing better care to the person who needs it. Caregivers in Alberta, it is a common misperception. Most people think that women are mainly caregivers. But if you look at the statistics in Alberta alone, there are almost as many men as women who are caregivers. The difference is that men very rarely self-identify or acknowledge that role of being a caregiver. Men have the classic response of, well, I'm just the spouse, I'm just the son, I'm just a friend, that's just what I do. I'm not a caregiver, I'm just stepping in to help. And why is it important to recognize yourself as a caregiver? This is a question that I often hear, like, well, what's the big deal? Why do I need to recognize myself as a caregiver? If you don't see yourself in that actual caregiving role and recognize that you're providing an additional level of attention, additional level of care outside of just your role of being a friend, outside of your role of being a spouse or a son, if you don't see that, then you continue to take on more and more and more tasks and responsibilities. When we recognize ourselves in that additional role, we're more likely to see the things that we are doing to supplement daily life for that person needing care. And we are more likely to see, well, what are some of those tasks or responsibilities that can be outsourced? People living with health challenges, illnesses, and disabilities have access to certain services and supports in our healthcare system. Caregivers don't. There's not actually many resources and supports for caregivers, but the care recipient can access certain things. And so often caregivers are doing tasks and jobs and taking on responsibilities that can be done through additional healthcare services or supportive services that you can get through community-based services. So that is why recognition of yourself in that role is important. I mentioned there's almost 1 million caregivers in Alberta. The cost savings that this offers our healthcare system is $6 billion a year, because those family caregivers, those friends, those people supplementing daily care are supplementing the healthcare system. And most of us working in this industry are already acknowledge that and are aware of that. But it's really mind-blowing when you put a figure like that on it to see just how much is being carried on the shoulders of family and friend caregivers. Caregivers in Alberta are all ages. Another common misconception is that most caregivers are in the senior demographic, and that's actually not true. The bulk of caregivers are between the ages of 30 and 64. So that's your prime time career years. People are often raising families and caring for aging loved ones. So this is the label that you hear might be the sandwich generation, because they're sandwiched between multiple caregiving responsibilities. But it's not true that it's only seniors or only those who are aging that need support and services in the caregiving role. The time spent by caregivers in Alberta, the bulk of caregivers are spending up to 9 hours a week. You do have, an additional 12% that's spending 10 to 19 hours, or even more than that, 20 plus hours a week. But the bulk of caregivers, when you look at the stats and the data in Alberta specifically, that it is around, it's a minimum of 9 hours a week. They're spending that much time caring for their care recipient. I don't know if any of you noticed on that previous page, but 27% of caregivers are in the age bracket of 15 to 19. That's really high. That's in Alberta alone. And there actually aren't any programs or services specifically targeting that age group of family caregivers. These are caregivers often caring for parents, grandparents, and siblings with disabilities and health challenges. And so we as an organization are actually looking at partnering and licensing some program curriculum from one of our sister organizations to build some programs and services that specifically target this age group here in Alberta, because it's obviously a high need, and they often go unseen. They are the hidden caregivers of Alberta. Caregivers are pillars of strength. We are the leaders of the family. They're often the glue that's holding everything together. But who is taking care of the caregiver? Who is giving you, if that's you in that role, the much needed love, care, and support you need? And just answer that question for a minute. Who's giving care for the caregiver? We are more than just the spouse. We're not just the daughter. We're not just a friend. And helping your clients and yourself see that is highly important to us, recognizing the supports that we can bring to the table. Caregiver burnout is a real challenge. Most of the clients that come to us, that find us, have already unfortunately hit this point. And so our mission, in the future of where we're trying to head is to raise awareness and recognition of the caregiving role so that we can eventually become more proactive and avoid this burnout phase. But for most of our clients who find us and access our services, they've already hit this point, unfortunately. They've been doing all they can do and shouldering all the work that they can until suddenly they're tanking and they're caving and they're falling off a cliff. Caregiver burnout is a result of having difficulty asking for help, having high expectations of yourself and others, having a strong and unrealistic dedication to making things ideal for the person you're caring for. Caregivers have great difficulty saying no. I myself, having been in that caregiving role, and especially a spousal caregiving role, it's so hard to just say no and recognize sometimes when you need to step back and say that in order to protect and care for yourself. But it's hard. You feel very selfish, and it's a major difficulty for most caregivers. Caregiver burnout is also caused by that consistent sacrificing of yourself and your needs for the benefits of others, and feeling as though you're the only person capable of providing care. I hear this a lot with clients. You know, like we have access to additional support services through home care or other avenues, but we often, our care recipient may not be comfortable receiving those services, or we're not happy with the level or degree of service being offered. And so we feel like we still have to take that on, and we're the only one really actually capable of providing the care that's needed. And so we actually talk in a lot of our caregiver support community groups about how can we put in check our own expectations around some of this stuff. We also look for these signs of burnout. Are you lacking energy? Are you seeing clients who are frequently dealing with their own illness and their own health? They're frequently sick. Are they always exhausted? Are they neglecting personal needs? Are they verbalizing that their life feels dominated by their caregiving role? Do you find that they're having difficulty relaxing when help is available? Are they acting impatient or irritable? Are they feeling overwhelmed, helpless, or hopeless? These are some of the common signs of burnout occurring in action. I'm going to go through several slides that talk about the very specific impacts that caregivers experience as a result of the caregiving role. And these certainly are important for us to know about when we're looking and on the lookout for preventing elder abuse, because recognizing that these are the impacts that caregivers are facing, and families and communities experiencing a caregiving role. So mental health is a big one. Caregivers are at a higher risk of depression, anxiety, and stress. 31% feel overwhelmed, short-tempered, or irritable. I think we can all relate to that when we've had those moments of feeling overwhelmed, short-tempered, or irritable. Our coping mechanisms that we depend on don't always work as well when we're feeling that way. And then you add on top of the fact that you know, we may be experiencing depression or anxiety and stress, and our reactions to those around us may not always be so good. So this is an important impact and challenge to be aware of as we think about how can we prevent elder abuse. So recognizing that the mental health impact on caregivers is high. And so what can we do as professionals and organizations to support the mental health of our clients? There's a financial impact that happens. There's lost wages or even lost job. 41% of all caregivers miss days of work. They miss paid days of work, which means they experience lost wages, and that impacts their family financial security. They experience out-of-pocket expenses. 61% incur extra bills and out-of-pocket expenses. And 43% report needing financial support, or say they're already accessing government assistance. There are physical challenges that come with this role. So when we physically wear our body out and tire our body out, and when we're in pain, we don't react as we should sometimes. 1 in 2 caregivers report fatigue. We all know that fatigue is the number one, fatigue and sleep is the number one impact for brain and cognitive function. And so when your brain's not firing as sharp as it could be, again, you're not able to lean on the coping mechanisms and the stress reduction techniques to help your responses to things. So 1 in 2 caregivers report that lost sleep, extra chores, heavy lifting, stress-related illnesses, and a compromised immune system. So many clients have said, you know, I feel like I just can't get over this cold, or just can't get over this, you know, whatever it is they're battling. They get better, and then it just comes back. And it's because their immune system is often compromised by the lack of sleep and by the stress that their body is going through. This won't be unfamiliar to any of us sitting here in this virtual room today, that caregivers experience system challenges. They have difficulty finding and accessing services. So even if they've found it, they have difficulty accessing it, or they don't know how, the avenues, or it's just frustrating. Like they see the instructions of how to access the service, but just going through all those hoops is frustrating and exhausting. 1 in 3 caregivers report needing more information or more assistance and additional advice from healthcare professionals. And so that's something that we need to be aware of. One of the things that we talk about in our Compass for the Caregiver program, which is a 4-week workshop for caregivers, is we talk about how do you communicate successfully with healthcare professionals? How can you be prepared for medical appointments so that you feel like you get your questions addressed and you know how to communicate it to the healthcare professional? So that's a big piece of it, because 1 in 3 caregivers report needing that additional advice and conversation with practitioners. So caregivers experience difficulty in relationships. 1 in 2 caregivers say that they end up spending less time with their partner or other family members or their other social hobbies. 1 in 4 say they feel a strained relationship with other family members and friends because of the caregiving duties and responsibilities that they're going through. And 1 in 6 say that they feel lonely or isolated. And we already know that isolation and that feeling of loneliness is a risk factor for elder abuse, for sure. And so I'm sure you guys are looking at some of these challenges and these impacts and checking the box and saying, yep, this is an indicator, this is a risk factor, and it absolutely is. So that's why it's important for us to know and understand what are these impacts for caregivers. Many caregivers go through negative emotions such as guilt, anger, grief, sadness, doubt, and worry, and the isolation again. What are the positives? I like to highlight this because I talk about the challenges, the negative impacts, because again, we have to know what that is in order to provide additional support. But what's so cool is that 74% of caregivers say that caregiving has actually strengthened their relationship. In spite of the challenges that they go through, in spite of the difficulty of accessing services or the physical difficulty of actually providing the care, they say, but you know what, actually, it has strengthened my relationship with my loved one or with my friend. It does reduce their time with other friends, with other partners, or other social activities or hobbies. And so that's something that we should be aware of, because when we're doing a lot of sessions with clients and workshops with clients, we try and shine the light back on, well, what are your own social activities? What are your hobbies? What are your interests? Who are you as an individual outside of your caregiver role? And that's something that we try to, again, highlight for caregivers. Family caregivers are the experts in care, yet they often feel unheard in healthcare settings. So how do we help focus on these positives and shift, recognizing the impacts, recognizing the challenges, shifting the focus to the positives, and what can we do to meet those gaps in services? How we help is that our mission is to truly help empower the caregiver and promote their well-being. And we truly desire to see an Alberta where caregivers are valued, respected, and supported by practitioners, by healthcare, by community-based services, by neighbors, everyone. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this very specific programs and services that we offer because they are open to you and your clients. They're free services. They're programs that anyone in Alberta can access, and frankly, even beyond Alberta. We have people joining us for sessions and groups that are outside of the province and even globally, which some of you are probably also experiencing that in this virtual environment. But this is a quick high-level overview of what our programs are. Our main basic frontline service is our support line. You can call us between 9 and 4:30, Monday to Friday, your typical weekday business hours, and reach somebody on the phone. You can talk to a member of our support staff, and we're there to listen. We're there to offer help by digging through the information and referrals and resources that we're aware of, by sharing our knowledge and experience around how to navigate the healthcare system and access certain services and resources that are specific to that caller's needs. We have a caregiver coach program that works with caregivers one-on-one to share specific strategies and tools for managing the stress as a caregiver. So people call our support line, they email us, They access, a member of our staff and receive some advice, some feedback, maybe some additional resources. And maybe there's the stress that client is experiencing is high, and we recognize that they need a little more one-on-one attention. They get referred for a caregiver coaching appointment, and they can have multi-sessions with one of our caregiver coaches to discuss their very specific situation, what's going on, and then essentially put together a care plan for the caregiver to address their needs in health and wellness and managing the stress of that role. We offer education sessions, which are all virtual right now, but we offer a variety of sessions. We usually host guest speakers, similar to what I'm doing today in a virtual environment. I'm speaking to a topic, and we host multi guest speakers in a variety of topics. Caregiver support community, we offer those. Those are our peer support groups. We offer them 3 times a week, and I have a slide that shows that information. And then we do the Compass workshop, which some of you are familiar with. I noticed some names on the participant list who are facilitators of Compass, so you're very familiar with what this program is all about. But it's basically about helping caregivers learn how to take care of themselves. Because if we can't take care of ourselves, we can't continue providing that care to our care recipient. So our caregiver coach is someone that clients and caregivers can talk to one-on-one. You as professionals working in the space supporting people can call and talk to one of our caregiver coaches to talk about tools, strategies, and advice with clients. They are the listening ear. They help people navigate the system. They help find resources. And we do teach caregivers, how can you advocate for yourself? How can we speak and communicate to advocate for ourselves and our own needs as a caregiver, not just only the needs of our care recipient. And so you access our caregiver coaches just by our general intake support process. Call our main line, talk to somebody, and then you can get an appointment scheduled with one of our caregiver coaches. We do have caregiver coaches in different zones. So, Alberta has 5 AHS health zones in the province. And part of the expansion and growth that we're going through as an organization is pulling in teammates and caregiver coaches in each of those different AHS health zones. So right now we have a caregiver coach for Edmonton zone, Calgary zone, Central zone, and South zone. So the only zone we're actually missing right now is the North zone, which is a giant zone. But by the end of 2022, it's in some of the grant deliverables and outcomes we're working on with the government is that by the end of 2022, we will have a staff member station in each of those 5 health zones. So we're almost there, which is great. But for us as an organization, we need your help pushing acknowledgement of the services that caregivers can receive through us, because we're growing, we're pulling these teammates in, and now we need people to know that this service is here for them to access free of charge. There's no charge for our caregiver coaching or our caregiver supports. The caregiver support community I mentioned is that peer support program. It aims at empowering caregivers' well-being, providing that supportive group with other peers where they can connect, have open conversations about the ups and downs of caregiving, and learn about tools and strategies for managing that role, learning from a peer. It's so cool to sit in on those groups and help facilitate and guide conversation and hear a caregiver share with another caregiver, this is what I did, or this is what I learned, and to see the light bulb come across the face. Oh, man, I hadn't thought of that. Thank you. That's what our caregiver support communities are for. We offer them 3 different times a week in an attempt to, provide different access points for caregivers. Some of caregivers are still working. So we offer them Mondays at 10 a.m., Tuesdays at 6 p.m. I'm sorry, actually that's 7 p.m. Tuesdays at 7 p.m. I need to change that. And then Thursdays at 1 p.m. So those are the times that we were offering them during the week. It is a registered program. We ask people to go to the website or go through Eventbrite. We do all our registration through Eventbrite. We ask people to register, but there's no fee for that program. And you can just drop in and check it out and see if it's something that can help you or not. So I would ask that you let your caregivers and your clients know about these opportunities. Our education sessions that I mentioned provide an opportunity for caregivers to explore various topics, connect with other caregivers, and get to know us as an organization. So some of the guest speakers that we pulled in to speak in these areas have been around conflict, around communication barriers. How do we overcome those communication barriers? How do we become a better communicator? We've done sessions around transitions in care. We've done education sessions and workshops around managing stress and holistic wellness. We've done, workshops like with a breathwork facilitator, or we had one a few weeks ago with Sherry Ann, and she is a holistic healer with therapeutic touch. And so she actually did a session with clients and whoever registered to attend to teach us our own self-care, a new self-care skill of therapeutic touch for ourselves, for energy healing and promoting our own holistic wellness. So we do a variety of things. We have physicians come in and do sessions. We had a critical care physician come in and talk about how do you plan for critical illness, not just end of life planning and things like that, but actual critical care concerns. How do you plan for that? And so we attempt to meet the very, very diverse challenges and needs and circumstances that caregivers across Alberta are experiencing. So when we are having conversations, our caregiver coaches are having those one-on-one appointments, they're hearing what are those individual circumstances occurring, and they're seeing trends and they're discovering things. And that information informs our education sessions and the programs that we're offering based on what are we hearing from Albertan caregivers. And so the same thing with our caregiver support communities and other groups and sessions that we're doing, that our clients and caregivers are informing the resources that we're trying to offer. So we usually do these education sessions several times a month. We're actually going to do something a little different for the summer. We're gonna do a summer series, excuse me, through July and August. So instead of having 2 sessions a month, we're actually going to do an 8-week session. We're going to have a series of education over a span of 8 weeks where people can sign up for and come and go. They don't have to come to all 8 sessions, mind you, depending on the topic they're interested in. But we're going to try something a little different for the summer and see if we can engage and hit some new areas and new clients. So look for that info coming your way. Our compass for the caregiver program, which some of you, again, are very familiar with. It is that 4-week workshop program. It's a curriculum program. It's actually the longest standing program that Caregivers Alberta has had. It was piloted and created in 2007. So it's been around a long time. And the feedback that we receive from community partners who deliver it, and then from clients that access it through our delivery, it's a game changer. It really is. And it helps shift their focus just enough for them to recognize the importance of looking after their own health and their own needs. And then it makes them a healthier, happier caregiver, and it's better for their care recipient too. So the facilitators who support that program, I'm one of them, and we have multiple of our staff. And then we work with partner agencies across the province. And you can be trained in that curriculum and in that program to be a facilitator of it. But some of the content that we go through is we talk about guilt and grief. We talk about managing stress, improving communication, navigating the system, and then planning for their journey ahead to avoid some of those feelings of anxiety and stress over the uncertainty of what lies ahead. And many of our clients are caring for people with progressive illnesses, and there's a lot of anxiety and fear there. So we talk about how can we plan and be more proactive for what's coming ahead of us. Some of the feedback that we've gotten from the Compass program is that people feel heard, they feel understood, they learn that they have choices and that they can say no without feeling guilty. I think that's the session where we talk about guilt and emotions and understanding the own emotions and layers happening inside of us as caregivers is my favorite part of the content and of the workshop. because you really see a drastic change literally in the faces of people who are attending this program. So having someone help was the difference between coping and crashing. That was actually put into one of our feedback forms. I struggled for a long time all alone with no one to turn to. That was other additional feedback that we've received. What can you do for caregivers? Those of us sitting on this call today, we can acknowledge them. We can address their experience. We can help them recognize stress. We can help watch for those signs of burnout and be aware of the impacts and challenges that they may be experiencing. We can provide referrals. We can work with them where we can, and we can encourage them to find things that bring them joy. And we close a lot of our peer support groups with that thought and with that question. And we say, what are you going to do in the coming week to bring yourself a little piece of joy? And it's a great way to bring some closure and make sure that we're leaving the group with a positive focus. And because sometimes those groups unload some very negative, heavy information. And so how do we shift that and focus on pieces of joy, even in the smallest ways, whatever it may be. One of the techniques, I always like to close my presentation with professionals and other practitioners in the space, sharing a technique that our coaches actually have done or that our facilitators have used in groups with clients. So I'm going to ask you all to just sit back and relax for a moment, close your eyes, get comfortable in your chair, maybe get a little stretch. Just get nice and comfortable, close your eyes for a moment, rest your hands on your lap. Make sure your feet are touching the ground. This is an important part of it. And just be aware of your feet on the ground, feeling like all four corners of your feet pressed into the surface. And I want you to imagine some colored pencils. And I want you to pick up the colored pencil of your choice in your mind. And we are going to trace around each foot. So we're going to start with our left foot, actually. You're going to pick up that green pencil, red pencil, yellow, purple, whatever it is. You're going to start at the back of your left heel. And you're just going to draw up the outside of your foot. We're tracing our foot. We're coming up to the pinky toe. And we're going to go over each toe till we arrive at the big toe, trace around that big toe, come around the inner side of your foot, down into the arch, and down to the back of your heel. And be very present with that outline that you've just created around that left foot. And we're going to do the same thing with the right foot. So pick up, but maybe you want to pick up a different colored pencil this time and trace with a different color. Feel free to do that. And we're going to start at the back of the right heel, and we're going to come up the right side of the foot, up towards the top of the toe, the pinky, and around each toe, coming to the big toe, trace around the big toe, coming around down to the inside of your arch, and back down to the back of the heel. And take a deep breath. And just sit peacefully for a moment, feeling your feet pressed firmly into the earth, into the ground and the surface. We'll just come back and join our little group here in our virtual room. That's a simple grounding technique, and it's an example of something that we sprinkle in to coaching sessions or education sessions or peer groups with clients as an additional coping stress management strategy. So I just like to share that so that you know, as professionals, what are some of those actual stress management techniques that we talk about with clients? Well, that's one of them. So we talk a lot about breathing and grounding exercises. So how can you help your caregivers? We have try to make it as easy and as simple as possible for partners and people around the province to help your clients who might benefit from our services. Again, they're free. We have a digital referral link. So you can copy and paste this digital referral link and save it on your desktop, save it somewhere on computer. You can use it on your mobile device, anywhere, it doesn't matter. And essentially, if you have a client that you're working with that you know could benefit from talking to one of our support members or talking to a caregiver coach or maybe attending one of our workshops or something, you can say, you know what, I think you'd really benefit from Caregivers Alberta. Tell them about us and say, may I have your permission to share your name and contact information with them, and they will reach out to you. It takes that barrier away for the client. And we have so many people that say, oh, thank God, I don't have to write down one more number, write one more email. They really appreciate the fact that we reach out to them and say, you know what, Wendy gave me your information, and we're reaching out to see how we can help. How can I help you today? I understand you're a caregiver. You know, what are your challenges, and where can we help? So this is a digital referral link that you guys can all have access to, obviously, in the follow-up information from this presentation today, but it is how we would encourage you to refer people to our services. So, and with that, that's me. We'll close. There's our contact information very quickly, website, phone number. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, so you can follow us and reshare, you know, any of our programs and services to your clients and in your networks. And I think we're ready for some questions.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. It was very informative. I do have a question here. Is the Compass program free? Are the resources shared by email or hard copy?
The Compass program is the only program we have that has a fee attached to it. And so there is a registration fee for that, because we do mail the participant manual out to participants. So yes. And it's you know, a $50 registration fee. It's not terribly expensive. We actually work with clients, if that's a barrier for them, we remove that barrier. We have a scholarship fund that they can apply to access funding to attend the Compass group. Well, my question for some of you are obviously, none of this information I'm sure is new or you know, groundbreaking to share, but are you seeing any of those impacts and challenges and how they relate to elder abuse at all?
Nobody's going to speak? Definitely. Caregiver burnout has been directly related to elder abuse for a lot of the reasons that you said, that maybe being short-tempered or exhausted or not realizing or not taking care of themselves or not realizing where they're at in their journey. And there is a direct correlation to elder abuse. I'm not sure how much more.
No, that's helpful. I mean, I again, like what we talked about wasn't information that we don't all know, but I just like to hear, like, are we on the same page, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, whether you're a professional caregiver or a family member or a friend, the same risks apply to everyone. Mm-hmm. I remember I took training from you, and I didn't even identify that I was a caregiver. I'm a nurse by training. You would think that would have been pretty obvious to me, but when you're involved in it, when you're immersed in it, you just carry on not realizing. So just after the fact, being able to identify for myself that I was a caregiver, that validation was huge in that healing process for myself even.
Mm-hmm.
I really appreciate your programs. And one of the things I wondered is there employment opportunities with your organization, or is everybody a volunteer, or how do we get more involved?
I missed the first part of your question. Is there what opportunities?
Is there employment opportunities, or is everybody, do people take the training and then volunteer to provide that service? Or
for the Compass program specifically, you can become a registered licensed facilitator through training with us, and then partner to deliver that program under your agency's umbrella of programs and services. So that is an area of opportunity where you can get involved specifically around that program. But as a whole, we are working very diligently to build stronger relationships and referral pathways so that your clients, for many of you on this call, can access our services, can talk to our caregiver coaches. We are, as most of you too, are often looking for additional supports or services to help caregivers. And sometimes you know something that I don't know. So the fact that I have a relationship with you in that space and can say, this is a situation I have a client dealing with. Do you know of anything in that area that I'm unaware of? So it's important that we as professionals and other community-based service providers build those relationships so that we can share resources and contacts with each other. So that is definitely a way you can be involved. And I encourage you to reach out to us for that. And you can connect. You can connect with myself. Absolutely. I'll put my email address in the chat box, but we have a person who is our engagement coordinator who is working on building those relationships. And his name is Angus McDonnell. So I would be happy to connect you with him, and we can talk about more specifics around, well, what sort of partnerships are you looking for? What do you want to leverage of our programs and services to supplement what you're providing? So, and then of course the referral link. I see some hands by Jill Chambers.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Joanna. I work as a financial concierge. So we work as daily money managers. And I'm just wondering if that's an area of stress that you sometimes come across with the caregivers, where not only are they providing the personal care, but now, oh my gosh, now they have to run the family finances, and the person they're caregiving, typically they did all that. Where do they start?
Yeah, you're correct. It is an area where we see stress, and we've done some workshops in the past around some of that. So if you're interested in partnering with us to provide some additional information or resources or tactics for managing some of that, it is an area of stress for clients, and it is an area that we're always looking for additional resources to offer them.
Okay, well, I'll connect with you and share my website.
Absolutely. Here's my email address. Anyone feel free to email me, and either myself or Angus, our engagement coordinator, will follow up with you. Absolutely. Yeah. And I see another hand with Charlene Sitar.
Thanks, Johanna. Yeah, and just kind of following up, Jill, with what Jill mentioned, because my comment or question was going to be around the financial stress that comes with caregiving, and also in relation to you asking about how caregiving directly relates to elder abuse sometimes. So certainly some of the things that we see are using caregiver stress or the burden of caregiving can be used as a justification for perpetrating abuse towards an elderly person. So I'm just wondering, and maybe I know this is a big conversation and a big topic, but I think that sometime, going forward, some sort of strategy or at least conversation for us to have about how to engage in conversation with people who are crossing that line of using their caregiver role to take advantage of older adults. We have talked before in, I think through the CORE Alberta team, but also in different pockets of groups that we've had conversations about predatory caregiving, which is becoming from at least my perspective, it's becoming a much bigger issue in our province, where people are seeking out people to care for and taking advantage of them in that capacity. I'm just wondering if you guys have seen any signs of that or heard of any of those issues.
You know, we haven't. Most of the clients coming to us are you know, in a caregiving role where they're trying their best and they're hitting that burnout and they're just not sure where else to turn. We don't see clients. I can think one instance or two, even in the past year, where that's even been a question that's come up with our staff about, do you think that there's an underlying issue going on here that's more than just that's possibly, you know, a caregiver taking advantage of a situation. So it's a rarity that we see some of those warning signs. But again, I'll be very honest and say, you know, we are still actively pushing awareness around our programs and services. It's not like we're speaking to 50 clients a day. We're not. And so I would anticipate that as our services become more well-known and we start getting busier with clients, that we're going to start hearing of more of those circumstances happening, and the opportunity to then partner and reach out to the appropriate other people is going to be necessary for us.
Thanks. It's good to know that you're not seeing that, and I would venture a guess that perhaps you guys aren't seeing that because the caregivers that are reaching out to you are maybe not using their caregiver role in that way.
Right.
And, and you know, the people that would reach out in those situations would be people concerned about the person who's being cared for. Mm-hmm. But just, you know, I think it's a topic of conversation in the future that maybe we all might want to have. So, but thank you for the information you shared.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you're right. I think, Joel, do you have your hand up again?
Can I ask another question? Or I don't...
Yes, absolutely.
I'll just take my hand down here. It kind of leads into a referral that we had recently in term, this, it was a husband and wife. The husband developed Parkinson's. And so the caregiver, to have some time for herself, had him admitted to a respite facility. And then things went all sideways. He was never discharged. He went downhill very rapidly. And from having a very good relationship, now the two of them are just totally fractured. And he is so suspicious that now, you know, doubting everything she's doing. And I think this can happen with dementia too. You become that paranoia, and you're stealing from me, and where are you taking the money, and you're not looking after things. So in this case, we're coming in, the wife is totally capable of managing the finances, but we're coming in now because they need an objective third party. One, so that he will be far more respectful with us than he will with his wife, take the load off her from doing the work, and maybe they can get back to trying to repair their relationship. So, and I know with dementia, we get that a lot, you know, and we have clients do that with us as well. We're in there actively working in that role, and all of a sudden the client contacts it, twice it's happened, contacts the bank manager, said, "They're stealing from me." And the bank never phones us, but they immediately shut down the accounts. They refund all the payments, and it's a nightmare. So, but anyway, so just an aside.
Yep. Well, it is helpful for us, again, to be aware of what are the people that we can turn to when we do see these types of circumstances, and who can we refer for help. So, yeah. Danelda?
Unmute myself. Thank you. And thank you for the presentation. Part of my training and my background was in training in compassion fatigue. I trained with Charles Figley in terms of looking at compassion fatigue and working with compassion fatigue for professional caregivers. But there's a whole body of research coming out right now about compassion fatigue for family caregivers. And I didn't see it particularly in the presentation. I know that doesn't mean that it's not there, but certainly there's elements of and things I've experienced as a family caregiver and a friend caregiver of compassion fatigue that come into it too, that contribute in a different way than some of the causes of burnout that you talked about. And some of those, when I looked at them, seemed to be symptoms rather than causes. Often we take on that hero role as a symptom rather than a cause, although it contributes to it. So I was just wondering about that, if you're looking at bringing in some of the elements of the research of compassion fatigue that's going on right now and the impact that has on family caregiving.
No, that's excellent, and I'm glad that you brought that up. That has been discussed with our team, and so actually sprinkling that into this presentation is a really great recommendation. So thank you. Yeah. And it is something that we are aware of. Our coaches, the caregiver coaches that we employ, have a background often in social work or psychology and that type of stuff. So they're very aware of all of those layers and work hard with clients to address, that.
Right.
So, but I agree. I like your recommendation of actually sprinkling that into professional presentations. Thank you.
Thank you. I just, there's, when I think of it and some of the elements of trauma that come in by watching a loved one going through having to be revived, for example, or going through certain procedures. And, I mean, for me personally, I was a caregiver for a friend of mine who had cancer, but was present when she had to be revived because of some other complications. And, my role was a social worker, but I was a friend. And so knowing that connection helped me, but it doesn't take away the difficulty.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Well, we talk about too, not even just the trauma of specific experiences in health, but even the trauma of losing a relationship, with this person, the changing relationship. Like there's so much loss that caregivers go through and so many layers. Yeah. Charlene, do you have your hand up again too?
Yes, thank you. Can you just, sorry, I kind of came in late and I might have missed some of this, what you were speaking to. So my apologies if I ask you to repeat something, but you have the caregiver coaches that are available in parts of the province, but you had mentioned that you won't have one available for the northern part of the province until later. Can you just expand a little bit on that?
I absolutely can. So we don't have a staff member who's physically stationed in the North AHS health zone. We still serve that health zone. Again, like we serve clients all over the province, and we always have. So we've always taken phone calls and clients, and we've partnered with agencies in the North Zone and Fort McMurray and Grand Prairie in order to provide caregiver support to that region. But part of the expansion and growth that we're going through in now and in the coming years is to actually have staff stationed in various areas of the province. And right now, that's the only zone that we haven't actually acquired a staff member that's stationed in. So we're still absolutely serving people in that region and still partnering and actively, working with agencies in that region. So it's just our desire is to actually have a staff member in those regions who understands the local complexities. And that zone's huge. So we may end up with more than one person in that zone. It may be a Grand Prairie and a Fort McMurray, so we'll more than likely end up with more than one staff person in that zone long term.
That would be
part of our growth plan.
Okay, and you're looking at 2022 for that?
By the end of 2022, that will be that's our intention that's filled. Yep.
Thank you.
I don't suspect it will take till the end of 2022 to actually accomplish that. That's our timeline for it to be completed by. So if any of you have contacts in that area, in that region, and you're aware of people, you know, social workers or somebody, you know, in the health space that you think would be a good fit for caregiver support and caregiver coaching, I'm happy to speak to those individuals now. So somebody asked about employment opportunities, and, you know, for us, we were actively recruiting. We had an active job posting for caregiver coaches in all health zones, and we have pulled on 3 additional teammates specifically in those roles. So for now, we're good, but that doesn't mean that we're not constantly on the lookout for people, additional teammates, because we'll need that role filled. And for us, it's more about finding the right person with the right skill set in that area who can support the communities who live there. Does that answer your question, Charlene?
Yes, thank you very much. It does.
Awesome.
Hi, it's I don't know whether to go or whether to wait to be called.
Absolutely, go ahead.
Okay. Hi, I just wanted to follow up with what Charlene asked. I work in the North region, and I think it's also, it does make a difference when you have the ability to have someone physically in the area that is actually living in a region that starts to understand not just the larger centers resources like Grand Prairie or Fort McMurray, but the multitude of smaller areas that serve large geographical areas of farming and remote communities. And I think that's a real difference in the North, even than Southern Alberta. Southern Alberta is a very different beast in terms of the demographics and geography, and much more closely aligned with some of the larger centers that provide more supports. In the North, it's much more disparate in terms of geography and limited resources. And I think someone, and I know you're trying, so I applaud you for that, but just really, I encourage you that someone actually residing in or near those communities, it makes a huge difference in understanding, and for people to, I think, be more encouraged to reach out to someone who's in a northern region than to be told, which is often the case in the North. I'm kind of banging a drum I bang often, but it makes a difference to people when you're told to call an Edmonton number or a central number in terms of their follow-up than when you're encouraging people that may be in a really remote farming community and you say, hey, there's someone who can help you, and they live in the North, and you know, there's just even a difference in follow-up. So just passing that along for more information. And thank you for your presentation.
No, absolutely. And I'm really glad that you just said all that, because it just gives me validation, you know, to take back to my other teammates in the organization to say, we're on the right track. I did get some feedback today that it is important to have somebody in that region, because that is our goal for all the reasons you just said. So I'm glad that you revocalized it. And please follow up with me, and people who are already stationed in that region is who we need to build, you know, strong relationships with and support each other. So thank you.
Any more questions from anyone? I think not. Amanda, your turn then. Thank you, Donna. That was wonderful.
Yes, thank you very much, Donna. Just a bit here to finish up. We would like to invite everyone to join the the CORE Elder Abuse Group that is on the corealberta.ca website. And I have